good to know. How many here want to be an entrepreneur? Okay, good, good. All right, well, today's presentation is really the story of the business that I built and how I got there. And so that's what I'd just like to share with you today. So let me start by just telling you what Headcount actually does. And that is we do retail traffic and conversion analytics. Now it sounds pretty fancy, but essentially what we do is we count people that go into retail stores. Now think about it, if you know how many people are going into retail stores, what can you do? You could align your staff to make sure you have an ample amount of cashiers and staff available to support those customers. Excuse me. And you can also understand your conversion rate. That is, of the people that come in, what percentage of these people buy? As it turns out, this is a really important metric to understand in retail. Okay, so what we do is we install these electronic devices at the front entrances of retail stores, and we don't need to do a Dell recovery right now. So we install these devices at the front of retail stores. If you go into a retail store and look up at the front entrance, you may see something that looks like a camera or a smoke detector. There's a good chance it's a retail traffic counter. So the data from those counts comes to us, our head office here at Edmonton. We then get retailers' transaction data. We need to know how many sales transactions they have. We mash that data together, and then we produce reporting and analytics for the retailers. Daily scorecards, we push those reports out to over 5,000 sites every day. We have a web portal, mobile app, data streams. Make sense? Good? All right. At a high level, that's what we do. So we are based in Edmonton, though about 70% of our business is actually done in the US. So 70% in the US, 5% the rest of the world. In fact, I'll correct Cecile, I'll update that. We're now in 25 countries, believe it or not. So from Iceland to Ecuador, we have retailers' data coming to us, and we produce reporting and send it back to them. These are some of the brands that we work with, and you may recognize some of these names. That's the business as it exists today. Okay. So if I'm going to talk about how we actually broke through, I need to have you all come back in the time machine. We got to go all the way back. Now, Cecile mentioned 1994. I know I was saying on the way over here, I graduated from NAIT in 1988. That's 31 years.
Don't think about it.
That's harsh. That's harsh and sad. And anyway,
You're a baby.
I graduated, and it was
a baby.
really excellent education. To this day, I value the 2 years that I did here. I did go on to the U of A and so on and so forth, but I loved my NAIT education. I really did. So let's go back in time. I didn't start out being a retail traffic and conversion person. That wasn't my aspiration. But I worked in retail while I was going to school, in NAIT and then later in university. And it was really through those experiences that I kind of got the idea to start with. And it really started this way. And this is why Headcount actually started in 1994. I was working part-time for a local computer store called Soft Warehouse. None of you will remember it, but at the time they were the largest computer retailer in the city. And I was honored to have a position of marketing manager, so I was working on my commerce degree and doing that job. Now I had a $250,000 a year budget, which was a pretty good budget at that time. And here's what would happen. We'd run a promotion, run an ad campaign, we kind of launch the activity. The store would get busy. We only had one store, and it was a pretty big store. The store would get busy, people would come in, wander around. All our salespeople were helping these people as best they could, but lots of people would leave without buying. Now, you gotta, put yourself in the mind of 1994. Computers, PCs were $4,000, $5,000, $6,000. I mean, these were high involvement purchase decisions, and you needed to engage with somebody, a salesperson. But here's what would happen. Invariably, at the end of the day, the owner of that store would count the money in the till and go, oh, well, that promotion didn't work. His view of success was sales in the till. But as the marketer, what I had this disconnect on is the store was busy. The advertising, the promotions actually did their job, but we had no way to actually measure this. And I thought, eureka, if I could just count traffic, that would give me a metric that I could then rely upon and some way to gauge the impact of this market. Great. So the internet wasn't what it is today either. So I happened to be in the camera library at the university, trolling around old dusty magazines of Chain Store Age Executive Magazine. There was such a thing. And I find this ad for this company called Bunyar Melon Fund. Great brand, eh? Bunyar Melon Fund. It's a company out of Quebec that say they're the originator of the electronic pedestrian traffic counter. Eureka, I found it. So I called them up, and they said, yeah, we're happy to sell you our device. It counts traffic. It's a basic infrared beam, and every time somebody comes in, it counts. Great. I go to the owner of the store that I was working for, and I go, I found this thing. This is what it does, and this is how we can use it. And he said, $2,500? We could do a radio remote for $2,500. You could take out more newspaper advertising. No, we're not going to spend on that gizmo, is basically the answer I got. Well, I was dejected, but I was determined at the same time. So I went back to some of the other people that worked at this company, Software, other students. There was a couple of them that were working on their engineering degrees at the university. And I went to them and I said, hey, look, can you guys build me something? I need a basic traffic counter. Infrared beam, every time somebody crosses, it logs a count, maybe dumps the data to Excel or something like that. They said, yeah, that's easy. We can easily do that. So $300 in parts from Radio Shack, and I was in the traffic counting business in 1994. So it worked so great. Once we started to have this data, it gave us all kinds of insights about the business. And so I thought, I bet other retailers could use this. So I started to scratch on some doors, and I thought, I'm going to make a real company out of this. And that's when I formally incorporated Headcount, finally. So I go around and I start knocking on some retailers' doors, and what do you think they said to me? $2,500? What are you, crazy? That's what I got. Why would I want that? Why is this even important? So Headcount version 1.0 was not much of a success. In fact, I left it, dumped it, moved on with life. And where I moved on to was a company called Intuit. As Cecile mentioned, does anybody know who Intuit is? Quicken, QuickBooks, TurboTax, QuickTax? Okay. So I had an 8-year career at Intuit. I started as their QuickTax product manager, moved on to marketing manager, group product manager, vice president of sales and marketing, and I ended my career there as the vice president of the small business division, which was QuickBooks, and there was 8 business units that were all connected to that. It was really an exciting company to work for. I did have the proverbial corner office. The company was one of the best companies to work for in Canada, 2 years running. It was a really exciting ride. The other thing too is it was a wildly successful company. That's a picture of their stock chart at the time. Now when I joined the company, I was issued stock options. I didn't know what a stock option was. I didn't know how it worked. But over time, these things sort of accumulated, and one day I realized, hey, wow, I could change in some of these stock option things and pay off our mortgage. That's a cool trick. So it was really a great and successful company and a great career. I was there for 8.5 years. But 8.5 years later, I looked out the window of my corner office and I said, is there not more to life than just selling accounting software? Is there something more I should do? Because I could just keep doing this. This is a really great gig. But something was just saying, nah, you know what, try something else. So I went to the CEO of the company, who was my boss, and I said, look, I think it's time for a change. And he said, look, we'll give you a 1-year sabbatical. So what that means is that I didn't have to go to work. I basically got a year off. My health benefits stayed in place, and my stock options continued to vest. But I could go do whatever I wanted. So I thought, okay, this is great. So during that time, I decompressed for a couple months. Then I was wandering through West Edmonton Mall. And I'm walking through West Edmonton Mall, and I'm going, that retailer's not counting traffic, and that retailer's not counting traffic. It just, traffic counting just sort of came back to me, and I thought, what? I've been gone out of this traffic counting business for about 10 years, and nothing seems to have changed. Now, there was another problem we were working on, a challenge we were working on at Intuit, and that is, how do you turn shrink wrap accounting software? You know, many of you here go, what's shrink wrap software? Because it's all downloadable now. But at the time, it was like, how do you turn software into a recurring service? Because the most valuable companies today have some modicum of recurring service revenue. That's what everybody's striving for. We didn't quite figure it out, but it occurred to me when I was walking through West Edmonton Mall, this is the perfect thing for retail analytics. So I said, what if we put in traffic counts, we collect the data and do all the rest of it and do it as a recurring service? So that's what I wanted to do, and 2 months later, I called up the CEO of Intuit. I said, I'm not coming back. I'm going to do this. So I gave up the glamour of Intuit for the glamour of being an entrepreneur, and that's what our office looked like. Oh, I'm so proud of it. Look, isn't it wonderful? It's comparable to Intuit's. Interesting. Okay, this It's a small crowd. Okay, I don't expect any reaction. Yeah, we were in this 150 square foot office in the Edmonton Research Park. I hired one summer student, and we had new customers. And I never felt more alive than I did that day that we opened this office. And you gotta remember, I came from Intuit and I was an executive there. I was the third most senior person. When I started Intuit, we had I was the #8th employee. When I left Intuit, we had 450 employees. That was an incredible ride. But what also came with that is sort of an expectation about, perhaps my position in the world. I was a senior executive, so I know what I'm doing. I can run this business. Anyway, I'm going to get to that in a second. What we tried to do is we said, recurring service model I mentioned a moment ago. I said, instead of trying to sell a traffic counter, let's put it in for the retailer, let's collect their data, let's analyze their data, interpret the results, prepare the reporting, and then actually help them use and consume the insights. So that was the service model that was revolutionary. Nobody was doing this in the traffic counting space, which was really small little industry at the time. Okay. So here I was, scratching on doors of retailers, calling them up, saying, hi, this is Mark Risky, I'm calling from Headcount, and I'd like to talk to whoever's in charge of your store operations and so on and so forth. You think I could ever get to anybody? You know what I get? Talk to IT. With all due respect to the gentleman that came and got my notebook to project on here, IT's the last group you want to talk to. IT is like, no. Start with no, and then move on from there. Furthermore, IT isn't the business owner of this data. I was trying to get to store operations, but I just couldn't seem to get there. And even when I did, the retailers that I was able to engage with, they didn't really get it. They were like, why do I need to count traffic? We have our transaction counts. Like, we know at the end of the day, we have a till report. I know how much we sold. What is this going to tell me that I don't already know? So this is what it felt like for me. I felt like I was on the top of this mountain screaming. And also what I was screaming something else. I hate cold calling. When I was at Intuit, I had an executive assistant. And when I wanted to get on the phone with somebody, I would have her call and say, yes, I would like to set up a meeting with Mark Risky, and he would like to talk to you. And guess what? It was Intuit. People would take that call. I just assumed that would still be the case. That's not the case. They didn't know who I was. So I'd call up and I couldn't get through, and I just hated making these calls. I felt like I was begging. I felt like a beggar, and I hated it. So much so, and at the same time, my little fledgling company was burning cash like there was no tomorrow. Not that it was a big thing, but I was funding this out of my stock option money and my kids' education fund. And so, it was really troubling. And so I thought to myself, how can I didn't think I used the term breakthrough, but that's really what I was trying to get at. How can I create a platform to actually talk about this stuff? And I just got this idea. What if I wrote a book about it? What if I write the book on retail traffic and conversion? Nobody had done it. There was no books on it. I was a business student. I had gone through NATE. I went through the commerce program. I did the first year of the MBA program. There's no books. You will not find any books on the topic. And I thought, I'll write the book. So that's what I did. And so I wrote this book called When Retail Customers Count. This was the first book ever written dedicated to the topic of retail traffic and conversion analytics. And so during the day, I'd keep scratching on retailers' doors, try to get my business going. I had about 5 employees at that time. I was just trying to build the business, and at night and on weekends, I would write. And it took about a year from start to finish, from the very first word on the page to having this book in my hand. And not only did I have to write the book itself, I had to figure out how to get published. Let me tell you, that was a whole nother thing, because it's like, okay, you reach out to publishers, and it's like, what are you, a fool? Nobody's going to publish this book, and then you got to maybe try to get a literary agent. Well, that's even more ridiculous. Look, and so I discovered what the self-publishing industry was pretty new at the time, and some was saying, no, that's kind of hack, and it's not really the way, it doesn't have the same gravitas as a publisher, but I didn't care. And I found a way to get it done, and so I did. The first box of books showed up in my office. I was so excited. What a sense of pride. I had this book. But pride doesn't pay the light bills. And so what I immediately started to do is send these books out directly to CEOs of leading retailers in the country. That's what I did. And so things started to change. I no longer felt like I was a beggar. I felt like I had a shield of steel, and that was this book. Because now I would make these phone calls out to these CEOs, and this is what I would do. Instead of saying, "Hi, this is Mark Risky. Can I talk to somebody somewhere in your company?" I would phone the CEO directly. So first of all, I'd send the book out in advance, because I didn't like cold calling. But I'd send the book out in advance, and then I'd phone up and say, "Hi, Mr. Smith, this is Mark Risky. I'm the author of When Retail Customers Count. I'm calling for two reasons. Number one, just to confirm that you received a copy of my book." "Oh, you did? Well, terrific. Now I'd like to see if we can schedule a time so we can talk about the ideas in the book and how they apply to your chain." Funny thing happened. Not only did these executives take my call, but they were willing to meet with me. You see, CEOs don't want to meet necessarily with salespeople, but they will meet with authors. It's a funny thing. And so what I'm going to share with you is my monthly recurring revenue. Now, I've stripped out the numbers because, Cecile said she's going to record this, and I don't need the world to know it. I'll tell you all. That's not a problem. Those little bars, you see those little gold bars? That's my monthly recurring revenue. You can see right off the start we had a couple of bucks here and there coming in. So here's where the book happened. So it took a year and a half, the first year and a half of the business, and then that's what happened to my recurring revenue. Hey, that's an encouraging chart. Pretty good. Not only did we start to generate business, we started to get some media coverage. This was, I think, one of the very first pieces that was ever done. This was the Edmonton Journal. It's a terrible photo, I must say, by the way. Headcount tracks retailers' traffic, validates sales and advertising. I was so proud to get this done. It was in the Edmonton Journal. It was exciting. Then Alberta Venture did a feature story on us called Counterintelligence. Now it was like 5 pages, and I framed the whole thing. The frame probably cost me about $500, and I didn't have at the time, but I was so excited I had to get it done. It was really terrific. Then we started to get more media coverage, including the National Post, which was the first national media that we got, which was pretty exciting. Trade press also started to pick up on this, and really picking up on the reason why retailers should track traffic, measure conversion rates in their stores. So that was pretty exciting. And in fact, at that point, and this was an excerpt from one of the stories I said, retailers are starting to get it. I really thought we had broken through. I really did. I thought we were there. And it didn't end with print. See, this also led to a media interview that I did with Business News Network, and some of you may recognize the interviewers. That's Kevin O'Leary.
Oh, Mr. Wonderful.
This was very early in his broadcast career. You see, he was already rich because he cashed out of his company Softkey a long time ago, but he was just starting to work his way into media, and I think I was pretty early in his career. So that was pretty cool. And the lady is Amanda Lang. Some of you may know she was the chief business correspondent at CBC. Now she works for Bloomberg, which runs this Business News Network. So that was pretty trippy in and of itself. But it didn't end there. That fed on some other opportunities, and we got our first big speaking gig with the Retail Council of Canada. And again, it was the book that helped get us there. Now, what do you think I did with 350 people in the room? Well, I put a book on every one of their chairs. That's what I did. These are 350 retailers, and now, it cost me, I don't know, I didn't have the money probably at that, well, no, things were getting a little better at that time. I did have the money for these books, but the book went everywhere I went. It was the platform that I continued to speak on. And so that's what we did. And the Retail Council of Canada presentation led to other speaking engagements, technology conference, and that was Boca Raton. No, that was, doesn't really much matter. It was Fort Lauderdale, and then the top one is the Reebok National Store Managers Conference in Newport Beach, Rhode Island, and then there was the Foot Locker Store Managers Conference in Toronto, and then another conference, this was in San Diego, an executive briefing, and it continued and continued. And so this momentum continued to build, and we had our name submitted for Entrepreneur of the Year in 2007. We didn't win, we were a finalist, but what you notice in the background, what was the theme that recurs? It was kind of the whole book angle. So I got a lot of mileage out of this book, and it certainly made all that work very much worth the effort. So our business continued to grow. Now, does anybody here, do people remember the great economic meltdown of 2008 and 2009? Everyone here should remember something about it. Well, December of 2008 is right there. It's where my revenue was at its highest. And what was strange about this is that the economy and the stock market crashed in October of 2008, but our revenue kept going up. And I thought, we're impervious to these big economic, these macro factors. Wow, this is durable revenue. This is really, really valuable. And then January came along. See, what was happening is retailers were getting through Christmas, and then as they got to the holiday season, it really hit the fan. Retail went through a tremendous downturn. And so what would happen is some of our clients would phone up and they would say, look, we have to terminate, we have to cancel the service. We're letting staff go, we even terminated our janitorial services. We have no money, everything's getting cut. But we also had some clients that said, look, we need this data now more than we ever do, but our budgets are getting cut. Can you just take my rates down? Can you give us a break? And that's where you see our yellow bars going down. And so we did go down in revenue, we took a tumble, but it didn't go right down to nothing, did it? And we were able to kind of find our way through this. Those are good times, not. All right, so we got through it though, but we did get through it, and now I've been doing this now for, I guess we're into about 6 years or so, and it occurred to me that we had come to learn so much more about traffic and conversion analytics. Like, the first book was what I thought it was, but I thought, now I actually know what this stuff is. And so, in 2011, I wrote this book. It's bigger, it's fatter, and it's the book that, to a great extent, has come to actually define traffic and conversion analytics in the retail industry even today. Conversion, the last great retail metric. 386 pages to be exact, and I read almost every one of them. So what did I do? Well, we started sending it out. We started sending it out to CEOs that didn't respond to the first one, or to other CEOs in the United States and across, all across North America, which was the market we tended to focus on, and our business continued to grow. Now, of course, that led to some really interesting things. Now, I'm just going to read a little bit of this. Now, that is the president of Office Depot. We don't have any Office Depot stores in Canada anymore, but it's one of the biggest retailers in the United States. They're about a $6 billion retailer. This is their president. So I sent him a book, and he says, thank you for the copy of your new book. I started reading it yesterday. I could not put it down. Great. He went on to tell me a little bit about his journey with traffic and conversion, because I only started getting into it. He says, if you ever have time, I'd love to share a little bit of our retail transformation journey and get your perspective on what we might want to think about. Think about that. It's pretty trippy. Here's the president of a $6 billion retail enterprise asking me for my perspective on their transformation. That's pretty crazy. He also went on to say, which I really liked, I bought 30 copies of your book on Amazon, share with my leadership team. Well, I was invited down to their Boca Raton headquarters, and I made a presentation to their executive committee. He was nice enough to stand here for a picture. Anyway, so that was pretty trippy. And then, of course, you know, we continue to speak. I've done speaking engagements all over the place, including San Salvador in El Salvador. Does that make sense? It's confusing as hell, but I've been there twice. Let me tell you something about retailing in El Salvador. They have armed guards at many of the front entrances of retail stores. And before I made my first journey down there, because we landed a client, there was a major, one of the biggest retailers in El Salvador, saw some of our material online, attended one of our webinars, and one thing led to another. We did a pilot project, and I was invited to speak to their executive committee. Anyway, so I go down to San Salvador, and I see these guards standing outside of stores, and I think to myself, terrible for traffic, awesome for conversion. You gonna buy that? No, just kidding. Okay, that's how I felt about it. Here's what I really did learn though, and that is the basic fundamentals of how many people come in your store and what percentage of those people buy on any given day, translated into it made as much sense in San Salvador as it did in North America or anywhere else, because this is just really fundamental information. So not only did we build the business, and build the business and reach out to clients and gain customers, but our competitors also caught wind. This was a note that I got from the CEO of a company called ShopperTrack in Chicago. Now, ShopperTrack is the worldwide leader in retail traffic counting. They have been around the longest, they've done the most. This is a note he sent me, just caught up with your new book, Conversion. I read it cover to cover. It's an excellent book. You must be very pleased with it. I found myself going again and again. He also struggles with why the industry is so small and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I liked your book so much, I bought it for virtually the entire management team at ShopperTrack. Well, this is flattering, and I accept that. I probably made a more formidable competitor as a result of it, but it didn't matter. I was delighted that happened. And that's when you know you make a difference in the industry, I think, when your competitors do something like this. Interesting sidebar, ShopperTrack and I got into a discussion about them potentially acquiring us in 2012, which would have been pretty exciting. Unfortunately, that didn't quite work out. It just didn't happen. He ended up selling ShopperTrack for $175 million a couple of years later. Damn, it would have been good to be part of that deal. Nonetheless, it was still an exciting ride, and to have this happen. So our revenue continued to grow, but again, it's not just about the industry, and it wasn't just about customers. There were other things. By this point in the company's evolution, I felt like, up until this point, I had bootstrapped the company. It was only just my investment that was driving the company and the profits from the company. Well, trying to grow your business based on operating profits alone can really slow things down. So I really felt like we were in a position to raise some money. So we raised $1 million in venture capital, and largely it was based on not only the trajectory of the business, but the platforms really made us stand up. Platforms, the books and the work that we had done, it really helped make the decision for that venture capitalist to put that money in. And so that's another way that this platform really helped us. These books really helped us. And then our business continued to grow and shoot up, and bringing you more or less up to speed, we signed Staples USA. We've been doing Staples Canada as a client for the last 4 years. Based on that work, we got introduced to Staples USA, one thing led to another, and we just signed them as a new client, 1,200 stores. Now remember, here's how we work. We charge you X dollars per month per store forever, if we can. And so the fact that they came on 1,200 stores, we have to install equipment, they were our largest client ever. So that's bringing you right up to speed. So we've done pretty well. You know, this last 15 years has been quite a journey. We've written a couple of books. We now get pretty broad media coverage. We've been covered in the last year we had 2 mentions in the Wall Street Journal, 12 mentions in Forbes, lots of industry publications and stuff. And I've spent the last now 15 years writing about, speaking about store traffic and conversion, these very basic metrics that the industry to a great extent had really not saw the need to do. So that's been a pretty remarkable thing, I think. But one thing I'll also say about being an entrepreneur and kind of what I thought I set out to do, I think lots of us go into this thinking that we want to be rock stars, Elon Musk's or Steve Jobs, or let's get some female entrepreneurs in here. I Googled list of top female entrepreneurs, and you know what? The names that came up would likely be not names people in this room would know. And so come on, ladies. It's time for some strong, serious leaders. You're out there. Oprah Winfrey comes to mind, and there's lots of others, but there's lots of room for more strong.
Kim Kardashian.
I didn't hear that. I was going to say this, but she's great.
Good. Yeah.
She's phenomenal.
Yeah.
And she built a $1 billion business.
Great idea.
Yeah. So the reality is, this is what I thought, because we all have aspirations. Not maybe everybody aspires to be a business rock star, I don't know about star, but do something really important. The reality is most of us are going to end up like this. We're going to end up a bar band. Now look at these guys. They're playing as earnestly and as enthusiastically as anybody else. And the line between tremendous success, modest success, and failure, I can tell you from firsthand experience, is a very fine line. Sometimes things go great, sometimes they don't. What this feels like is you come into the office every day, and it's like playing a game of Monopoly. You turn over the card. And sometimes it says, pass go collect $200, and sometimes it says go to jail. Not real jail, we have, thank goodness, but that's the way business is, and we can't predict how these things are gonna turn out. The vast majority of businesses are small. 75% of businesses in Canada have 10 or fewer employees. That's just a fact. Now, when you survey the general population and ask them, what would you like to do? Of those people that want to do something else, you ask them what they want to do. I think 2/3 of people will often say, I want to have my own business. And 1/3 of those people will say, when asked why, they'll say, because I want to be the boss. And that's a good aspiration. I'm going to come back to that thought in a moment. 2 last slides. Final thoughts on breaking through. This is a mistake that I made, and that was assuming that the market would understand or appreciate what my offering was. I thought it was self-evident. I thought it would just be, they would just go, where have you been all our lives? Here's a PO, let's sign up tomorrow. That's not at all what it's been. And in fact, to this day, you would be shocked and amazed at the major retailers that don't count traffic in their stores. They don't know how many people come. And so it continues to be an ongoing challenge to actually get some retailers to actually understand this. Number 2, creating a platform is really an important thing that you need to do. Now, in today's day and age, it's never been more easier or more challenging. Now, people often ask me, how's that book, book strategy, do you recommend it? I go, I highly recommend it. I highly recommend writing a book. It's a great strategy. There's only one downside. You actually have to write a book. And that's a hell of a hard thing to do. You can be very enthusiastic about it. You've all written term papers or going to or whatever. You gotta, when you're sitting there with a blank piece of paper, yeah, it's like that. And it's fun to start, and it's hellish at the end when you're trying to get to the end of this thing. And so, the good news is in today's day and age, there's so many ways that you can get your message out. Social media, online, blah, 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 it's all there. But there's also so much noise. There's so much junk out there. And even book writing isn't cracked up to what it once was. Go on Amazon. There's plenty of shitty books on Amazon that are self-published. There's plenty of them. So it's tougher to break through today. And I guess the final thing I would say about this is it's a continuous process. I kept looking for the breakthrough. Oh, this is it. Oh, we're talking to Kevin O'Leary and Amanda Lang. We're going to break through. And then I get back to the office and wait for the phone to ring, and it didn't. And then we do another thing, and another thing, and another thing. I present at the RCC conference. Oh, the phone's going to ring like hell. Not really. It continued to be a challenge. So breaking through is a process, and you don't ever really arrive, and we still haven't to this day. We continue to work at this. In being an entrepreneur, you hear these things and you know them yourself if you really want to be an entrepreneur. When I left Intuit, and if I go back and I do the math, I'm sure I would be far wealthier if I would have just stayed where I was. That company continued to do well. I would have got more stock options. I was paid well, and there was no risk. But at the end of the day, you have to decide what it is you want to do with your life and what's important to you. And so for me, it wasn't just about making money. You don't get into being an entrepreneur just to make money. You hope that's the case, but there's a lot of uncertainty here. And in fact, at the end of the day, I actually created financial existential risk for my family by doing this. And you know what, it's funny, because I worked at Intuit. We sold small business accounting software. So it's not like I was confused about small business operators. That was our primary customer. So I was in focus groups, and we had lots of engagement with small business operators. And I was always like, I respected them, but I was like, pat, that's nice, but it's small. I don't want to do small. And when I'd hear about small businesses failing, I'd go, well, maybe they just weren't that good. And I couldn't understand how people get themselves in financial peril this way until I actually lived it. And here's how it goes. You have a little bit of success and you go, okay, it's about to happen, so let's just keep going. And then it doesn't quite turn out, but you've made some progress. And then you get a little further down the road and it's like, okay, we're still burning cash, but we're seeing some more progress. And you just keep going and going. And until you get to a point where you go, I can't go back. I only have one option. I gotta keep going forward. And there's something very clarifying about having that happen, because you no longer have any choice. You go, we have to be successful. Anyway, not about making money. You do get to create the values and the culture of your organization, and that's really trippy. It gets to reflect what it is you think is important. And today, headcount is about 30 employees. Over the course of the last 15 years, we've had about 50 or about 60 people, I think, come join us and then leave or whatever. And that's been really cool to have people to build a corporate culture and to define that. There's also downside, and you hear this from others, and you'll hear it from me. The good news about being the founding CEO is you get to make all the decisions. The downside is you get to make all the decisions. And I can tell you that the vast majority of decisions that I have to make on any given day are never black and white, always some version of gray. And you're almost always dealing with incomplete information. You'll never have all the information you need to make a clear decision. So you have to use intuition, and a trait that I find really helpful is paranoia. Really good one. That really works. And sleeping pills also help from time to time. And lastly, humbling and profoundly rewarding. I could have stayed at Intuit, as I said. I could have just built a career, and when I was looking out my window in my office when I decided to go out on my own, I hadn't aspired to do this. It was a funny thing. I wanted to work in larger corporate enterprises. But you know what, I never felt like I owned any of that. That I was a hired gun. And I could be engaged, and I could be a great employee, and I could be a team member, and I could be all that. But when you run and operate your own company, it's you. Everything is extremely personal. And it's terrific. So over these last 15 years, we're still a bar band, but we've generated about $35 million in revenue. 16 million of that has been paid out in salaries that people have bought homes with and gone on family vacations and supported their families with, and that's really rewarding. And so if you're up for that, I highly recommend it. So that's all I really had to say. Now, just my last slide here. Cecile, when we got this meeting scheduled, she said, oh, and maybe we can make your book available. Look, I don't know how many of you are interested in a book on traffic and conversion analytics. My introduction, I talk about kind of the journey and how I got here. If anyone is interested in a copy, you don't have money, you're students. I'm not gonna make you buy my book, but if you want one, you need to send me an email and tell me why you're interested in the topic. And I will be happy to send you a signed copy. I'll work that out with Cecile, send them to the office, and you can pick it up from there. That would be my gift to you. So that's it. I want to thank Cecile and Magicen for inviting me. It's my pleasure, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to take them now. Thanks.
Anybody have any questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
Where do you see headcount going future state?
Well, analytics have not gotten less important. They've gotten more important. Analytics are everywhere. And now another variant of analytics is AI and machine learning, when you take quantitative masses of data. So we have great ideas for how we can take this simple traffic and conversion data and really be able to use AI and machine learning to really tease out insights that nobody had thought before. So we just think there's still plenty of runway left in this business, and so we're going to continue to really pursue that. Yes?
Mr. Risky, just a question in regards to, I quote you when you mentioned that you get an account and get there and deploy your equipment, right? So I would like if you please relate to that equipment and as well the new technologies that will be replacing those particular devices, and if that equipment as well thrive in ecosystems that help your business going.
Okay, so if I can paraphrase the question really about how the technology that we're using may be evolving and how that might influence or change our business. Traffic counting technology has gotten more and more advanced, but the pursuit of it really has been about accuracy. How can we use stereoscopic cameras to get more precision? Increasingly, traffic counting will be done with this. And in fact, there's been attempts to use Wi-Fi tracking on personal smartphones for counting traffic. Here's the problem. You need to have Wi-Fi enabled, and it's not perfectly accurate yet, because as cell phone or smartphone adoption continues to grow, your traffic's going to grow, not because there's more traffic in the store, but by the virtue of adoption. The other slippery slope with this has been privacy. There's been a number of companies in the traffic count industry that came out as Wi-Fi tracking and this was the future. And the problem was, there was a couple of very highly publicized cases where, I'll give you the example, it was Neiman Marcus, Nordstrom in Dallas. And they implemented this kind of tracking, never told any of their shoppers. And what happened was a news station in Dallas caught wind of this and started asking shoppers coming out of Nordstrom, hey, did you know you're being tracked? And people went, what? And they freaked out. It turned into a bunch of bad press for Nordstrom. Privacy is going to be a huge issue for all of us for lots of different reasons, and retail is one of those places. In addition to smartphone tracking, which is coming back around, the other is video cameras that are capturing your face, facial recognition. Okay, it's a slippery slope, okay, because I can do facial recognition, capture your image, cross-reference that to Facebook and all your social media, build a demographic profile on you and everywhere else you've been. Do you think that's a fair thing to do if I tell you about that? Should I have to tell you I'm doing that? Or do you think it's my right as a retailer to do it without telling you? What do you think?
I think we have to assign the customer to provide that.
You think, sorry, say that again?
I think as a customer, I should manage my own privacy, right?
Nobody's going to want to do that, because the moment I stop and go, hey, do you mind? People are going to say, I'm opting out. And then the analytics are all going to fall apart. So this is some of the challenge, but it's going on.
Sorry, and this is where I'm going with the ecosystem. So if we know, for example, in the airport, those tools will be deployed for security. So this is an ecosystem. So how retail will really leverage that database in a way that customers feel okay with that, right? So this is where you as in retail will be enabled to use those ecosystems of those frameworks in different industries to power your business.
Yeah, and in fact, I thought the loss prevention industry was a great partner. In fact, if they're already, so customers are okay with you taking images for security reasons. They understand that, so that's fine. Those same images, that same data could be used to count traffic and measure conversion rates. That's why I tried to partner with some of the biggest loss prevention service providers in North America to try to extend their service offering, but we just never made much traction with them. Because at the end of the day, those security devices tend to be good at one thing, and that's security. And the moment you start to try to multi-purpose a technology platform, you tend to compromise one or the other. And so the loss prevention folks just were having a hard time doing that. But clearly it's going to continue to evolve. And so I'm agnostic technologically. I don't care, we're using stereoscopic cameras today, but I don't need to. I'm okay with using, under the right conditions, Wi-Fi tracking under the right conditions, or even surveillance. But it's got to be the right conditions. Ultimately, it's about actionable insights from this data, and that's the hard part. Collecting data is collecting data. Retailers they're up to their ears in data. What they struggle with is extracting key insights and then making decisions based on that. Okay. Other questions? Yes, sir.
So essentially in the beginning you were measuring the conversion rate as the rate of people walking in and the people walking out with the product in their hands. So has those ratios sort of changed over time into something like, oh, people walked in but they walked out with a certain product, or which product is being sold more and at what times?
Yeah, that's the kind of level of detail that we actually get into with the retail clients that we serve, and that's that is the essence of the work that we're actually doing. They want to understand these dynamics. Things have changed dramatically. Just think about what online has meant. Today, the term is omni-channel, and that is whether you shop on your phone or online. Still, the vast majority of transactions are conducted in brick and mortar stores. So how that's impacted conversion rates is as follows. When somebody crosses the threshold of a brick and mortar store today, it's very likely they're there to buy, because they've already likely thought about it and looked for something. And so what we see is declines in shopper traffic, and there was thought that online was going to kill brick and mortar retail and Amazon was killing all the retailers. That really hasn't come to fruition. Certainly online continues to grow, but brick and mortar stores are still absolutely vital and a big part of retailing. But conversion is a much more nuanced metric than it once was. So if I'm buying online but picking up in store, does that count as a transaction and go towards conversion, or doesn't it? That depends. How do we want to define that? And so there's a lot more nuance to this, and so that's part of the service that we offer. Not only here are the analytics and we'll collect the data, but what they buy is our expertise in helping them interpret and understand what this data means. Any other questions? Yeah.
Who's your senior most client at FedChem?
Almost a dead tie. London Drugs and Sleep Country, they've both been clients for 13 years. Think about that. They pay us every month for every store for 13 years. In fact, I'm going out to present to the executive committee of London Drugs on April 17th. That's the other thing that we do. So not only are we proud of reporting and analytics, but as part of our work, I will, to make sure that these ideas stay at the most strategic level, I will still go out and give presentations at that level, give them an overall view of their traffic trends and things that are going on and so on and so forth. One of the biggest ideas that we're working on now is productivity, connecting labor application versus traffic opportunity, and how we use conversion rates to understand the efficacy and productivity of employees and how they're scheduled. And it's a huge one. Not only can you drive your sales results, but you can also optimize your labor expense. So it's a double. Yes.
From operational standpoint and the alignment into the communication strategy at company launch, you guys execute that, or you just do an alignment with that communication strategy to provide those analytics? Means if a company is gonna develop a web campaign and that web campaign is gonna ultimately, you wanna drive traffic on the store, you guys execute that campaign, or the company execute that campaign and you get alignment to that? How that works?
They execute. So yeah, because here's the other thing, we serve lots of companies that are also competitive with each other. So it's an interesting line we have to take. We're focused on traffic and conversion analytics and how these get applied, and so we'll inform them, but most of these companies have their own marketing teams and they're executing. We'll help them set up and construct test and control, experimentation, that kind of stuff. Okay. Any final questions? Okay.
Can you guys join me in thanking Mark for coming?
Thank you for your time today.
You're being handed out these, if you don't mind filling it out, just putting a check mark on the one that applies, stick it on the desk on your way out, if that's okay. We have on Thursday, so tomorrow afternoon at 4, we have Make It Happen, which is a co-collaboration event with all the post-secondaries in Edmonton. A speaker in to talk about how to get your idea funded. And then Monday, we have ATD in to talk about how to make your business bankable. So if you have any questions about those, you can ask me. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.